Shinano put to sea on the night of November 28, 1944. Less than 17 hours later, the largest aircraft carrier in the world was already listing heavily, and a few hours after that, it disappeared beneath the Pacific Ocean. But wasn't destroyed in a massive naval battle. It wasn't overwhelmed by waves of enemy aircraft or surrounded by an entire fleet. One American submarine was enough to bring down this giant. But the strangest part came afterward. For decades after the war, no one could say with certainty where Shinano actually lay. And once you understand why, the entire story takes on a very different meaning. After the Battle of Midway, Japan lost 4 aircraft carriers in just a few days. It was a disaster that completely changed the balance of power in the Pacific. The Imperial Navy urgently needed a new flagship, but instead of designing a new carrier from scratch, Japan made an unexpected decision. It took the nearly completed hull of the 3rd Yamato-class battleship and converted it into an aircraft carrier. That meant Shinano had never been designed to be a carrier in the first place, and that decision would later play a crucial role in its fate. Shinano became a true giant. With a full displacement of more than 70,000 tons, she was the largest aircraft carrier ever built at that time. But being the biggest did not mean being the best. Converting a battleship into a carrier created engineering compromises that designers had little time to solve. Several systems were still unfinished when the ship was nearing completion, and that was only the beginning of the problems. Japanese authorities surrounded the entire project with extraordinary secrecy. High fences hid the dry dock from view. Workers were forbidden to discuss what they were building, even with their own families. Photographs were almost never allowed. American intelligence knew Japan was constructing a major warship, but it had no idea how enormous it actually was. That secrecy seemed like an advantage. In reality, it created another problem that would only become clear later. As the war situation worsened, construction was rushed. Some watertight compartments had not completed their full testing program. Not every system had been fully checked under operational conditions. Many crew members had only recently come aboard and were still unfamiliar with the ship's layout. Even so, the Navy decided it could not wait any longer. American air raids were becoming more frequent, and leaving Shinano in the shipyard risked losing its most valuable new warship before it ever entered service. On the night of November 28, 1944, Shinano departed Yokosuka for the naval base at Kure, where the remaining work was supposed to be completed. Officially, it was only a transfer voyage. In reality, the ship was already carrying hundreds of crew members, valuable equipment, and military supplies. The Japanese expected the greatest danger to come from enemy aircraft. They had no idea that beneath the darkness of the Pacific, the American submarine USS Archerfish had already spotted an unfamiliar silhouette. Its commander did not yet realize he had begun tracking the largest aircraft carrier ever to sail. And the next discovery in this story is even more surprising. At first, the Americans didn't believe the ship they were chasing could actually be Shinano. The American submarine USS Archerfish was patrolling the waters south of Tokyo Bay. Her commanding officer, Commander Joseph Enright, had spent several days without finding a worthwhile target. It looked as if the patrol would end with nothing to show for it. Then, shortly after midnight on November 29th, lookouts spotted a large silhouette on the horizon. At first, Enright assumed it was nothing more than a tanker or a transport escorted by destroyers. But the longer he watched, the stranger the ship appeared. It was simply too large to be a transport. Its outline didn't match any aircraft carrier the Americans knew about. For a moment, Enright even considered that it might be one of the massive Yamato-class battleships. He had no idea he was looking at a ship that American intelligence barely knew existed. That is the first major revelation of this story. That USS Archerfish wasn't hunting Shinano. It found the world's largest aircraft carrier by accident. The submarine immediately began a pursuit that would last for hours. On paper, Shinano was faster. She should have been able to leave the submarine far behind. But then something unexpected happened. Because of mechanical concerns and the need to stay with her escorting destroyers, Shinano could not maintain her maximum speed for long. Every reduction in speed gave Archerfish another chance to close the distance. Slowly, Enright maneuvered into the perfect attack position. By around 3 a.m., he realized he might never get another opportunity. He ordered a full spread of 6 torpedoes. 4 struck the target. For almost any warship, that would have been enough, but not for Shinano. The ship had inherited much of the heavy protection originally designed for a battleship. Her armor was stronger than that of most aircraft carriers of the war. Captain Toshio Abe believed the damage was serious but manageable. He remained calm, convinced that the crew could contain the flooding and bring the ship safely to port. And this is where the story takes another unexpected turn. Shinano wasn't sinking because 4 torpedoes were too powerful. She was sinking because she had sailed before she was truly ready. Water spread through compartments that had never completed full testing. Some watertight doors failed to provide the seal they were designed for. Damage control teams were working aboard a ship that many of them barely knew. Yet even then, Shinano was not beyond saving. The decision Captain Abe made over the next few hours would determine the fate of the largest aircraft carrier in the world. And many historians believe that decision, not the torpedoes themselves, was the real reason Shinano never returned from her first voyage. Captain Toshio Abe believed until the very end that Shinano could still be saved. He ordered the crew to continue fighting the flooding instead of abandoning the ship. From his perspective, the decision made sense. Shinano was enormous, heavily armored, and had been built to withstand severe damage. 4 torpedo hits should not have been enough to sink her, but the flooding spread faster than the crew could control it. Water moved from compartment to compartment, and the ship developed an increasingly dangerous list to starboard. As the list grew, pumps became less effective, damage control teams struggled to move through the passageways, and every minute made the situation worse. Only a few hours after the attack, it became clear that the crew was losing the battle. Captain Abe finally gave the order to abandon ship. By then, it was already too late. At around 11 a.m. on November 29, 1944, Shinano rolled over and disappeared beneath the Pacific Ocean. More than 1,400 sailors and officers lost their lives. The largest aircraft carrier in the world had survived less than a single day at sea. But that wasn't the end of the story. After the war, very little was said about Shinano. Much of the documentation had been destroyed, and Japan's strict wartime secrecy left behind conflicting reports about where the ship had actually sunk. For decades, historians couldn't agree on her exact resting place. Only many years later, by comparing Japanese records with American submarine reports, were researchers able to narrow down the area where Shinano was lost. The problem had never been just the depth of the Pacific Ocean, more than 4,000 meters in that region. Inaccurate wartime coordinates, limited search technology, and years of military secrecy made the search far more difficult than most people realized. Today, we know what happened to Shinano. We know who sank her. We know how the attack unfolded. And we know why the world's largest aircraft carrier failed to survive her very first voyage. Yet the ocean still keeps its final secret. Far below the surface, Shinano remains where she sank, a silent reminder that even the most ambitious warships can be defeated not only by the enemy, but also by haste, human decisions, and their own unfinished design. And in the end, those factors, not the 4 torpedoes alone, became the real reason Shinano was lost forever.